Welcome to the Jung biographical introduction to the man who became the founder of modern psychoanalytical psychology. We're gonna start with his family. Born in the hamlet of Keswil on the Swiss shore of Lake Constance on 26 July 1875, Jung was the only son of the village pastor, the Reverend Paul Achilles Jung and Emily Jung nie Preiswerk. His grandfather, Carl Gustav Jung, after whom he was christened, was a much respected physician who became rector of Basel University and Grand Master of the Swiss Lodge of Freemasons. He was rumored to be the illegitimate son of Goethe. Though he bore a strong physical resemblance to the great poet, this is probably a legend and not a fact. Jung's mother was the youngest daughter of Samuel Preiswerk, a well-known but eccentric theologian, who devoted his life to studying Hebrew in the belief that it was the language spoken in heaven. He was an early advocate of Zionism, had visions, and held conversations with the dead. Right up to the time of her marriage, Emily was obliged to sit behind him as he composed his sermons in order to stop the devil peering over his shoulder. Most male members of the Lodge Preiswerk family were clergymen who shared Samuel's preoccupation with the occult. This Jung Preiswerk mixture of medicine, theology, and spiritualism was to have its influence on Carl's intellectual development. The family moved twice during Jung's childhood, first to Laufen near the falls of the Rhine when he was 6 months old, and then to Kleinhuningen just outside Basel when he was 4. Neither of the large vicarages which they inhabited provided a happy environment for a growing child. In his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung describes the home atmosphere as unbreathable. He says he was oppressed with a pervasive sense of death, melancholy, and unease, and with diminution, trouble between his parents. He tells us that they did not share the same bedroom and that he, Karl, slept with his father. When he was 3, his mother had a breakdown for which she had to spend several months in the hospital. And this enforced separation at a critical stage in his development seems to have affected Jung for the rest of his life. This is not an unlikely consequence, for as has been well established by John Bowlby and his followers, the despair displayed by young children on loss of their mother is a normal response to frustration of their absolute need for her presence. Should this disaster occur, children usually manage to survive. It is true, but at the cost of developing a defensive attitude of emotional detachment and by becoming self-absorbed and self-reliant to an unusual degree. Typically, they are left with lasting doubts about their capacity to elicit care and affection. They also tend to become odd and aloof in a manner which does not endear them to the others. Although Karl was cared for by an aunt and a maid while his mother was away, he recalled being deeply troubled by her absence. He suffered from nervous eczema and had terrifying dreams. From then on, he says, I always felt mistrustful when the word love was spoken. The feeling I associated with women was for a long time that of innate unreliability. Jung's father was a kind, tolerant man, but his son experienced him as powerless and emotionally immature. Quite early in his ministry, Paul Jung seems to have lost his faith, but lacking any alternative source of income, felt compelled to persevere with his parish duties. The strain of keeping up the appearance of piety while lacking all religious conviction helped to turn him into a querulous hypochondriac whom it was difficult for his wife and son to love or respect. As only child only until his sister Gertrude was born in 1884, Karl was unhappy at school, feeling alienated both from his companions and from his inner self. His rather schizoid, withdrawn, aloof, and self-absorbed manner made him unpopular, and a school environment was one in which he just could not flourish. Sense of personal singularity was aggravated by traumatic incidents, as when a master accused him of plagiarizing an essay which he had composed with immense care. When he protested his innocence, his schoolmates sided with the master. Such experiences made him feel branded and utterly alone. For a long period he dropped out altogether, having developed a proneness to fainting attacks after a blow in the head when knocked over by another boy. As he lay on the ground much longer than necessary, he thought to himself, now he won't have to go to school anymore. He spent as much time as he could on his own. I remained alone with my thoughts, he says. On the whole, I liked that best. Played alone, daydreamed, or strolled in the woods alone, and had a secret world of my own. We will continue the presentation in the next video.